Welcome to the Fleet Geeks podcast. We're here to help develop fleet and transport professionals. Do you want to progress and develop your skills and knowledge? We promise to bring lively conversation and debate around interesting issues and keep you bang up to date with changes in our awesome industry. The Fleet Geeks are a community of professionals, and if you enjoy the podcast, why not join the discussion for free in the Fleet Geek community over on Facebook.
Cool. So, I don't know, this is like the first episode of the Fleet Geeks podcast. I don't really know what else to say. I feel a bit weird about it actually, but it's really exciting. It's something I've wanted to do for a little while, which was I'd toyed with the previous podcast of a half dozen things, and hopefully people will have found this podcast off the back of that and the work that Flagship partners do. And I'm just really excited that we've not so recently had Jamie join the team, and then we've had Mike join the team too. I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves to the listeners as well. But one of the things that's really challenging when you run a podcast is you end up getting sick of the sound of your own voice. And having the opportunity to work with these guys who are both experts at what they do, I find it really exciting, and hopefully listeners will be able to get loads and loads of value from the conversations we have, the things we share, and the laughs we have. So if you're a transport manager or considering becoming a transport manager, if you're a fleet professional or you own, a haulage company, you're absolutely in the right place. Fleet Geeks is the place for you. And I guess we're just going to introduce ourselves. So I'm going to go with Jamie first.
Oh.
As he's taking a sip of coffee.
That gives me time to take a sip of my tea.
Come on, Jamie, you've been with us the longest. So.
Yeah, so I joined Flagship in September 2021. Before
you don't
that,
have to look at the camera.
I don't know. It's my first time on a podcast.
Jamie's a little bit fresh to this. So
very fresh to this.
It's fine. You don't need to look at the camera. Let's just chat.
Joined Flagship in September 2021. Before that, I was a transport compliance manager for a national fleet. So I've done that for about 3.5 years, 4 years. So all aspects of compliance for a fleet.
Are you allowed to say who it was?
I could say Forterra Building Products, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there you go. If people don't know who that is, that's what used to be Hanson Brick in Peterborough, Whittlesea, yeah? And you had depots around the country as well?
Yeah, so we had 10 depots. Quite a big job getting around all the different depots. Mm-hmm. Before that, I was a transport manager at Forterra Building Products. Looked after numerous depots, Whittlesea being the biggest, over 40 drivers, 38 trucks I think there was. And before that, transport manager down south for a depot based at Flagship and a depot based in Oxfordshire at Milton, if anyone knows it. I don't know if you know it.
Oh well. On the A34, been stuck there many times myself.
Yes, it's not far from there, you can see it from there, yeah. And before that, I was a driver, once again for Forterra. Well, it was Hanson Building Products back then. I did that for 7 years, and then before that, I was a apprentice mechanic and a technician. So I've been through different parts of the sector.
Lots of experience there for
quite a lot of experience
to draw on, which is great. And obviously now
I'm now a senior safety and transport consultant.
Yeah, and you've been with us sort of 6 months?
I think it's 4.5, yeah.
4.5? Nearly 6 months.
But we've met before, haven't we?
Feels like
in our previous roles.
I was going to say, so for the audience, Jamie and I met each other. I'd always, and it's probably a story for Mike to be fair, so I'd always had my eye on Jamie since I started Flagship actually, because when I used to work for Volvo Trucks, I ran the workshop at Peterborough. As a depot manager, and Jamie was my customer essentially. He was I think I only knew you from when you were a transport manager. I don't think I remember you as a driver, but I knew that Jamie knew his way around a vehicle because I wasn't able to BS him about whatever had gone wrong with one of his vehicles, or if there was an MOT failure or something like that. I knew there was no getting around it, but also obviously that you were very competent at that. And then when we got our first Fours client, I came and visited you. And you helped introduce Fours to me as well, because you'd obviously been running it a long time at Forterra. And I think I probably mentioned then that's probably about a year before we even first talked about you coming. I was like, are you interested, and that kind of thing, and you were a bit uncertain, so it took a little bit of arm twisting.
It did, yeah. But indecisiveness from me, really.
There you go. But here you are, and it is, it's a big thing, isn't it, when you go into a small business? I think people will recognise that when they listen. when they listen to the podcast, and if they're in that position where there's a lot of people who will listen, and maybe they're in a big corporate business and they're maybe thinking of going on their own, or maybe they're thinking to make a transition into small business, and it's quite a big thing for people, isn't it?
Yeah, it's massive,
that impact it can have on a family, particularly if you've got a young family or that kind of thing, and you've got financial commitments, it can feel like it's a big thing. So yeah, fantastic. Cheers, Jamie. Over to you then, Mike.
Well, yes, Mike Vickers. And me and Jamie have met also in a previous existence. It's a very small world when you consider it, isn't it, really? Because, Jamie was a delegate on a course that I ran at Forterra in Whittlesea. So it is a strange world, isn't it? But I've been around the industry since 1900 and frozen to death. Despite my youthful good looks, I had a very, very easy paper round. I've been around since 1981, and I very much like Jamie and Pete. I started my working life as an apprentice fitter, and as you do, you sort of move on and move through the world of the murky world of transport. And I ended up as, believe it or not, I've worked for a local to Peterborough anyway, local company for many years. I had very many happy years at a company called PC Howard down the road in Kingscliff. And following on from that, I moved down to the south coast. And when I was on the south coast, I did something really strange. I went and worked for the public sector. I ran a fleet of vehicles down for Portsmouth City Council. Bit of a confession time. While I was in Portsmouth, I became a big Pompey fan. Couldn't resist the lure of Fratton Park. So that's my dark secret that I harbour these days.
At that time?
They were bust when I was. I followed them all the way down, to be fair. I was a little bit like a Jonah. I think I should get banned for life from Fratton Park because I joined the Fratton Thong when things began to go haywire. So I spent 10 years or so down the south coast managing the fleet there, where I was. I hardly ever mention this, and I guess you guys, this will probably be news to you, but I was an award-winning fleet manager when I was at Portsmouth City Council. We won the prestigious Fleet News Fleet of the Year in 2016, which was pretty good for a public sector organisation.
Was it a big brown envelope?
It was indeed, and the winner is got to meet Greg Davis, very funny guy. The winner is. I ended up again, another dark secret that I harbour. We ran buses, and I ended up sitting my transport manager certificate of professional competence in buses. I'd got my truck one years ago. And while I was doing that, I thought the guy at the front, I thought, do you know what, I wouldn't mind a crack at that. That seems like a reasonable job to do. And lo and behold, I joined what was then called the Freight Transport Association, later morphed into Logistics UK, and that's where I sort of became a trainer. And for the last sort of 5 years or so, I've been teaching, mostly teaching, a compliance manager, a trainer, so mostly teaching the transport manager qualification. That's me, and I'm really excited. Pete said it is a bit of a jump when you come from a big sort of corporate world into a business, but that's what excited me. I've probably left it a little bit too late to do it, but now hopefully I'll be able to bring that experience and joy to these wonderful people here at Flagship. So first week, and it's yes, it's the tea's good. So what else can you ask for?
Yeah, exactly. So for those that don't know me, I'm Pete Rushmer, and I'm hoping that there'll be people listening that don't know me who have sort of found the podcast along from other ways and means aside from Flagship, maybe from Jamie's history or from Mike's as well. But I founded Flagship in 2018. My background, I used to work in the body repair sector once upon a time. I actually ran pubs originally back in the day. Which they don't really go hand in hand with trucks, to be fair. But nonetheless, I went and trained as a damage assessor, and then worked my way up to manager's role and worked as at Volvo for a long period of time. And then I thought, you know what, I got really frustrated with corporate life. I got really, really frustrated with being told what to do, and most of all, I got frustrated with shit managers. So I had a very shit manager. I've had a few shit managers along the way. I had some really good ones too. So I'm not going to mention any names. But I formed Flagship, and it was Maggie and I against the world, and it was really, really challenging. The last 3 or 4 years has been really, really challenging, but to be able to be in a position where I can bring guys of the calibre of you two into the business, to support the growth and to support that and share that with you both, I think is really exciting for me. And from a podcast point of view as well, a half dozen things. I originally set out on the journey of creating a half dozen things because I was interested in business and I wanted to learn more and I wanted to help share that learning journey with people. And it kind of merged its way into a transport specialised thing. It wasn't something I'd set up to do originally. And part of me wants to get back to that now that it's no longer just Maggie and I and it is a proper business. Half dozen things I can go back and refocus on, it being a business podcast and me speaking to business owners about how they grew their business, and I can continue to learn and develop that way. And at the same time, by launching Fleet Geeks, this aligns with the new service offering that Flagship are able to offer, which I'm really excited with. Mike coming on board, we're now going to be launching our Transport Manager CPC training, and that's going to complement nicely with our driver CPC training. But what we want to do is something that we think is fairly revolutionary in the sector, and that is to build a real community of transport and fleet professionals. So whether you see yourself as a transport professional because you don't necessarily work in what you'd recognise as a transport business, if you're a fleet manager, for example, and you run a range of vehicles, they don't even need to be heavy goods, it could be a fleet of vans, for example, and you want to learn more about what good practice looks like, you want to learn more about management systems, or even just from a safety point of view, the Fleet Geeks community is there to be able to help people and have that hive mind and have that level of membership. So Mike and Jamie are supporting this sort of new venture. It's very much linked to Flagship Partners. It's going to align with all of our training offering, but it's going to be essentially a free community. We're going to exist in the Facebook group on Facebook. If you go and look for the Fleet Geek Transport Manager community, you'll find it there. It's free to join, and what we'll do is, as it develops, we're going to be introducing mentoring, which is something that transport managers don't really have at the moment. I believe at the moment, if you go and qualify and train to be a transport manager, it's very much, well, there's your driving licence, now go and learn. And we want to be there to hold the hand and support people in their fleet professional role, to help develop that, because actually there's a lot of skills that aren't part of the exam, they aren't part of the qualification, that are really, really important, and they are leadership qualities, investigative qualities, dealing with drivers, managing drivers, dealing with senior leadership teams, getting essentially increasing influence with people as well. There's so much to it, as well as the systems and management systems that go with it. So there's going to be loads and loads for us to talk about. It's a really fast-paced industry, so I'm really excited to be able to share that with people. And I think Fleet Geeks, what we'll then introduce over time is there'll be essentially a service where we offer the mentoring, we'll offer some coaching, we'll offer one-to-one support if that's what's needed, but essentially we're just going to be there to help support people. A lot of the Facebook groups for transport managers are there to annihilate each other or belittle each other, or I've seen the conversations where things can get really negative, and I think if people are listening to this and you want somewhere safe to have a conversation, you can ask anonymous questions in the group. I'm more than happy for us to administrate those, or Jamie, Mike and I are all on LinkedIn. You're more than welcome to message any one of us, and we will give you our professional opinion. That is something that Flagship has always wanted to offer free of charge, that we will quite happily have a conversation with you, a free initial consultation about anything, and we'll have a conversation. And if there's work to be done off the back of it, then we'll have that conversation too. It may just be that you need pointing in the right direction, and that's what we're here for.
Hi, it's Pete from Flagship Partners. At Flagship Partners, we take road safety really seriously, and we're your road safety partnership. We help transport companies with compliance and training across their businesses, including first aid, driver CPC, and other transport management services. So if you're FORS accredited or you want to improve your operator compliance risk score, give Flagship Partners a call today.
How does that sound?
Yeah, I think Jamie will probably agree with me. sometimes as a transport manager, as a fleet manager, it's a pretty lonely world. Because quite often, in unless you work for a haulier, whether your specialisation is transport, that's your offering. Most people who run heavy goods vehicles, or indeed vans, even car fleets, the transport part of it will be ancillary to what the actual business is. So, as the transport department, he's normally, to be honest, at the bottom end of a pretty shitty hill, and we have to deal with quite a lot of issues there. And is that what you've your experience shown?
Definitely, yeah. And it can be a lonely place at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
You're the only one about making decisions. So yeah, it's definitely, like I say, to have that support is invaluable. Really, I think I was quite lucky. Really, I had someone I could always go to, but. It's
not always the case, is it? Yeah. You're pretty isolated in the world of transport. How many big organisations, how many big companies have transport on their, as a standing order on their board meetings, for example? Not many. About in your experience, Peter, that's not too many.
No, absolutely. And a lot of the time, it's just seen as a cost of doing business, and we see that with a lot of the customers we work with. People often say, "Pete, what's Flagship Partner's perfect customer?" And I say, well,
one that pays?
Yeah, well, one that pays does help. But a lot of our clients wouldn't necessarily recognise themselves as transport businesses. They recognise themselves as professional organisations, and the transport solution is a byproduct of what they do. And very much the people that work in that business or people that work in that department, they're either they might have done their qualification but don't really understand, haven't had the experience, often willing to learn. And I think there's a good opportunity for us to share that knowledge, because the thing that I'm really passionate about in the sector is business. I love business. It's so wide ranging, and there is my
Do you know what? This is funny actually, because stop. Yeah, we're going to leave that running. We're not going to edit it out. What that is. So I'm a bit of a weird mumbo jumbo kind of guy, and that was an alarm. I have 3 alarms set through the day that say 7-11 breathing. Okay. And what that means is that's me to try and lower my blood pressure and relax. So I do in for 7 and out for 11, and I do it 3 times. If you try it, it makes you feel really lightheaded. But yeah, it helps relax me during the day and reminds me to lower my blood pressure.
Great. Very good. Yeah.
We'll all be doing it by the end of the week.
Top tip.
Yeah. So that's my top tip for today. What I would say is that if you're listening, we're going to launch a couple of episodes quite quickly, because that's the right way to do it with a podcast. But what I would say is, if you've got a question, if you've got something that you're interested in, pose it to us, and this is going to be a very relaxed chat. There's not going to be Jamie, Mike, and I are just going to get together every so often and release a podcast. We're going to have a conversation. It's going to be a chat, bit of banter, no airs and graces. There's going to be bangs and coughs, and none of it's going to get edited out. It's just going to be very raw, and hopefully you're going to feel like you sat around the table with us. And very much, if you've got a question, if you want something to ask, all the better. If you want us to talk about that, because it saves us having to think of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
not just
the job done.
Absolutely, but it's meaningful as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and it was. I've been for a few years. I'm a technophobe. No two ways about that. But I've recently discovered the joys of YouTube and various other channels for digesting material. And I've been thinking a long time, there is nothing in the transport space. And when Pete started talking to me about this, I thought, well, that's just what's been missing, and just what the doctor ordered, really. I don't know about yourself, Joe.
Yeah, there is nothing, is there?
Nothing. Not I'm aware of.
Pete's podcast, really. Number 1, I believe.
Number 1, yeah. So
award-winning.
I'm hoping, Half Dozen Things is the number 1 podcast for the transport sector, but I aim for this to eclipse that, and so I hope that people come in their droves to listen. Anyway, I really appreciate you listening today. Thank you very much. And like I say, if you've got any questions, just reach out to one of us, give us a shout. LinkedIn's absolutely fine, or drop an email to hello@flagshippartners.co.uk, and we'd be more than happy to help support that. So yeah, see you later.
Thank you very much. See you later.
Cheers.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please share with your friends and colleagues too. Join us for free on Facebook with the Fleet Geeks community for transport and fleet managers. Fleet Geeks offers ongoing professional development, networking and mentoring too. So get in touch with me, Pete Rushmer, on any social media platform to find out more.